Hey, Warrior Saints. Happy Monday. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Yesterday was the feast day of my favorite saint in the Orthodox Church. And you can say you're not supposed to have favorite saints. I don't really care. I do. It's John of Damascus. St. John of Damascus lived in the 8th century and lived at a time when Islam was on the rise in the Middle East. His father worked for the caliphate in Damascus, and so he was steeped in Islamic practice and Islamic tradition. St. John eventually went to the monastery of St. Sabas, and there he flourished in his monastic prowess, his monastic works, his writing above all else. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. St. John was prolific in his writing. His major work is called An Exact Exposition of the Orthodox Faith. And what he did in this work was he took everything that had been written up to that point and put it together in a synthesized manner in a way to talk about the Orthodox faith in conversation with Islam. Because he knew Islam and he knew Orthodoxy, he was able to do this. St. John also did a lot of writing about icons and was a big defender of the icons, which at the time that he lived was a huge controversy for the church. And additionally, he was the first one to really write Byzantine music or church music that was being used. And he wrote hymnography to go along with it, perhaps one of the most prolific writers of hymnography in the church. St. John, in his exact exposition of the Orthodox faith, writes, "The very continuity of the creation and its preservation and government teach us that there does exist a God who supports and maintains and preserves and ever provides for this universe." So understanding that there is a God that ever provides for this universe, St. John took it all and systematized it in a way that could be usable for people to understand, but more importantly, everywhere. He was writing so much and he was producing so much that he was getting out there and doing what he understood God creating him to do. He was getting out there and he was working. He was laboring. He was grinding. He was doing what he had to do. He had an adopted brother that also went to the monastery. His name was Saint Cosmas, the melodist. And the two of them, in kind of like a sibling rivalry way, were writing hymnography for all the different feasts of the church. And by doing that, they just kept pushing each other and pushing each other and pushing each other and going and going and going and doing what they needed to do so that they could get the message that God is God and what his commandments are out there for people in a way that they could understand and a way that they could have. And that is exactly what you and I are called to do. That is exactly the example that you and I are called to follow. That is exactly what warrior saints do. We produce. We get out there and we are formed by those commandments of God. And we go out there and we share those commandments with the world, showing, even if it's just by our lives, that we are living those commandments, that there is an alternative to the things that are going on in the world around them. St. John lived in a world that was surrounded and controlled by Islam, and he showed that world that there was another way. There was another way. There was Christ's way. You didn't have to follow the trends of the time. You didn't have to follow what was the same thing everyone was doing. You could be different. You could be a warrior saint, and we invite you to do the same thing. Visit us at warriorsaints.org. Get on the way of the warrior saint. Get in the trenches with us. Get out there and show the world that there is a way to live following God's commandments by living a crucifixional life, not just going with the trends of the world. We'll be back with you tomorrow, and until we see you then, you keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.